Newstalk.
About a third of us head off on holidays and only buy travel insurance on the very day that you're on your way to the airport to jet off on your hollybops. This is new information from Go.Compare Travel Insurance, and they found that 30% of us buying travel insurance, we only buy the policy on that very same day of travel. Managing Director of Platinum Travel, Ciara Foley, is with us on the line today. Ciara, is this a mistake, first of all, only to buy that travel insurance when you're en route to Dublin Airport?
Hi, Andrea. Yes, to be honest with you, when it comes to travel insurance, I'm a bit of a stickler about it. If you leave it till the last minute, you could be opening yourself up to a lot of problems. So the rule of thumb with travel insurance is to buy it at time of booking. Now, that can be with your travel agent or your own provider, because if you don't buy it at time of booking, there's an embargo usually on cancellation. So let's say, for example, you're going to Lanzarote in May, you book the holiday in January, and you say, oh, I'll get the insurance later. If you don't add that on till April, they won't cover you for about 28 days. There's usually an embargo. So if you had to cancel last minute, you won't have any cover. The other thing is, if you have to declare a pre-existing illness, so say you have a long-term illness and you need to declare that, you won't have time for them to check it and to cover you. So it's an expensive mistake to make. And while I know insurance has gone up in cost, if you don't have it, you're in 3 times as much trouble.
And
so
sorry, is that just for, would say, the likes of a holiday cancellation, or maybe you need to cancel the holiday yourself? But does that embargo still apply for things like health cover when you're abroad? If you want to use your health insurance out, your travel insurance out there?
No, absolutely. If you buy insurance at the last minute, you will be covered for a lot of things. So if something that you unexpected happens, let's say, for instance, you got robbed, or you got sick unexpectedly while abroad from something that you didn't know was going to happen, then you'll be fine. But it's just if you have something pre-existing, or if you need to cancel last minute, they're the 2 little areas I'd be very, very careful of. So the rule of thumb is, buy it at the time. You always check your own providers, because if you have car and house, they might very well do a good deal on travel for you. Or with your operator, it could be the airline or the travel agent. It's just get it into your head, and then you do not have to worry. And if anything happens in that 6-month or 3-month period before you go, you're covered.
Yeah, it's the fine print, Ciara.
Yeah,
just read it. Yeah, and a lot of us don't, let's be honest.
Exactly. We all tick the box. Have you read this? Yes, I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Travel blogger Tara Povey is with us as well on the line too, Ciara. What's the biggest mistake that a lot of us make going on holidays, Tara?
Hi, Andrea. Yeah, I think visas is a big one. People tend to not do their research about what visa they need, or they forget, or they leave it too late to apply for a visa. Like even the ESTA with the US, like people might have thought, I had one, but they didn't check if it was valid. And then if you get to the airport and you don't have the valid one, you're going to have to apply last minute. You might not be able to get your flight. Or a lot of countries don't have visa on arrival for Irish passports as well. So you need to really do your research, because it can ruin your entire trip if you don't have the right visa when you get to the airport.
How do you find that out? Like, if you're not, I know if you're booking with the likes of Ciara or a travel agent, they will tell you. But I suppose it's the onus is on you, the holidaymaker, isn't it, Tara, to figure it out yourself?
Exactly. I'd say always use the official government website for the country that you're visiting, because there's lots of websites that will charge you a lot more to apply for a visa. And I know a lot of people kind of fall foul of that, especially for the US ESTA, when actually it's really only going to be much cheaper if you use the government website. Like for the US, it's esta.gov, but there's plenty of other websites out there that'll charge you more for your ESTA as well, when it's very simple for you to do it yourself. But I myself have fallen foul of it before. I flew to Rwanda and I didn't check if Ireland was on the visa on arrival list, and it wasn't. Well, look, I had a New Zealand passport and that was on visa on arrival, but I was only lucky that time,
Yes, you need to have that all sorted, I suppose, in advance. Eoghan Corry, I know the editor of the Air and Travel magazine. Eoghan, I know you see and hear a lot of this from your followers, but what sort of mistakes are we all making?
It's got so easy to travel that we do make very simple mistakes. Tara's just said the visa on arrival doesn't apply to it. It applies to so many countries. We get blasé about it. But, big holiday destinations like Vietnam and places like that, it doesn't apply. Very simple one, by the way, is do not arrive without having checked in online. People sometimes forget that the Ryanair check-in online closes 2 hours before the flight. It used to be a lot longer, but it's still surprising the number of people who assume they've checked in, or they think they've checked in, or the transaction wasn't finalised, or they didn't get the boarding card on the phone. They're the sort of things that arise. Ciara was talking about travel insurance. It's really important to remember that you can't get it when you've started your journey. You can actually get travel insurance right up till your takeoff. Obviously, there are anything more complicated with pre-existing conditions, you need to be booking a lot in advance. But even at the airport, you can get travel insurance, and there are specialist travel insurance companies. Once you've travelled, it's virtually impossible. There are a couple of brokers that have done it down the years, but it's really, really hard to get. The other major mistake we make is that we don't work out within a second or a third flight simple things like having your liquids in your bag. You buy duty free in Dublin Airport. You're going through Heathrow or Paris or Frankfurt, and it's taken off you. That will probably improve as those wonderful new Smith detection machines become more prevalent, but they're not ubiquitous yet, and they won't be for another couple of years. Dublin Airport won't even have them until the end of October of next year.
Often when you're buying something in the duty free, they'll usually tend to ask you, is Dublin or wherever you're going your final stop of travel, or are you travelling on somewhere else? But you basically need to know that yourself then.
You really need to. I mean, they do check. And the other thing about visas, by the way, is that you don't discover when you land in the other airport. You will be denied boarding. If there's any suggestion that there's anything wrong with your passport, I've seen people turned away because there was water damage to a passport that was in a pocket that got wet. It's at the check-in that should be turned away. And if you're not checking in, it'll be at the boarding gate. The reason is that airlines get heavily fined if people arrive at the other destination without the proper documentation. Okay. Keep an eye on Morocco. Sure, right. Keep an eye on Turkey. You will need 6 months before the expiry of your passport when you're travelling to those two countries. And in the other direction, there are a couple of airports that don't take online. They don't take boarding passes, mobile digital boarding passes. You will actually need a printed boarding pass. There are very few of those airports, but two of the destinations that they do crop up in are Morocco and Turkey. Yeah,
that's the same though, Ciara, for the States as well, isn't it? Some of for some of the American international airports, in terms of the length of an expiry that you need to have on your passport.
Well, the US, for an Irish citizen, if you hold an Irish passport, your passport can actually be valid the day after you come home. So it's actually our passport is very strong in the US. So if you're an Irish citizen with an Irish passport, it can be valid till the day you get back to Ireland. But there are countries where you don't need a visa, but you do need 6 months. Say Singapore, for example. So that's one that you might think, I don't need a visa for Singapore. That's great. But you actually need the 6 months and you'll be stopped going in. And just on one note, Tara and Eoghan both saying there as well about ESTAs and ETAs, if you're transiting a country, you may need a visa to transit. So if you're going via Canada to America, you may need a Canadian ETA to get into America, and vice versa, an ESTA to get into Canada. Or if you're cruising from Canada on an Alaskan cruise, you're starting in Vancouver, which is Canada, but you're actually going to go to Alaska, which is a US state. So they're just little things like that just it's good to tick all the boxes and make sure you've checked everything.
What about, Eoghan, the European health insurance card? I'm just thinking of people that are, maybe planning holidays or heading away now in the next month or two. What do they need for that?
Oh, great invention, but do be aware of its limitations. All the European countries and a couple of others like Norway, Iceland, it gives you health care, but it doesn't get you home. Let's say you break your leg on the ski and you have to postpone your journey home. That's what you will still need your travel insurance for that. But it does give you access to health services as if you were a citizen of that country. It is it's relatively easy to get, but do allow a little bit of time to get it. and make sure it's up to date. It's another of those things you've got to be watching the expiry date on.
Yeah. Tara, just finally, your top hacks or your top tips for people. I know a lot of us now are opting for the under the seat luggage bags. Many of us getting them in pennies and duns rather than even paying now for the 10 kg bags anymore.
I mean, I am a big advocate for hand luggage only. I think if you're able to do that, and I did like an Alaska cruise with hand luggage only just because it was during the time when all the airlines were losing bags. But I would say, like, the key is just to not overpack. Like, you really don't need as much as you think you do. You just need, like, a few changes of clothes and your essentials. And even if you're not going to put hand luggage only, I'd always recommend having, like, your medication, your valuables, and a change of clothes in your hand luggage, just in case your suitcase, God forbid, gets lost, especially if you're flying in somewhere to go on a cruise the next day, where it would make a big difference if your suitcase gets lost. It's always good to have the essentials in your hand luggage.
Yeah, the cruises are a big issue, aren't they, Ciara? Because you really need probably a very decent 36 hours to be in the country in advance of travel.
Oh, 100%. There's two ways for cruising. If you're going to book a cruise, ideally book the whole fly cruise package through the cruise company. So Royal Caribbean, MSC, Silversea, whoever it is. If you can buy via your travel agent or via directly the fly cruise package, then you're under their umbrella from the minute you leave Ireland. So they do the flights for you. If you decide to do your own flights, which is absolutely fine, you must do at least one night before you go in the destination. And also you can have cruise connection insurance. It's an add-on you can do with most insurances, which means that, God forbid, something did happen, you would be brought to the next port and you'd be covered. In a perfect world, do the whole lot with the cruise company. But if you're doing it separately, give yourself time and get that cruise connection insurance.
Absolutely. Ciara Foley, who's the Managing Director of Platinum Travel blogger Tara Povey, and also Eoghan Corry, who's the editor of Air and Travel magazine. Thanks a million to you all for joining us here with your top hacks and tips for all of our holiday makers who might be heading away over the next couple of weeks.